They thought it was an abandoned relay station. It wasn't. It was us, sleeping, scarred, and waiting, at the edge of the galactic spiral. Hidden behind the shattered bones of extinct stars, there drifted a silent station of obsidian. Steel, a relic humanity called Sentinel-7, once a defense node for a fleet that no longer existed. Now it was little more than a tomb orbiting the corpse of Earth. The galaxy had forgotten the humans, or so they believed. Inside, the hum of cryo coffins was the only sound. Muffled behind carbon walls 100 years thick, each unit held a name, each name a legacy. Each legacy a story of loss. The station had run dark for centuries, its purpose buried beneath the dust of 1,000 galactic cycles. And then, the beacon flared, a flicker, unassuming. Routine, broadcasted from a curious alien scout of the Valari Concord, a sleek ship of ivory and plasma sails, chasing rumors of salvage from the old wars. They mistook the relay signal as a ghost ping. The captain laughed and authorized docking. They didn't understand what they'd found. They didn't know the stories, the warnings, the reason the quadrant bore no other life. They only saw silence and assumed safety. But silence is not peace. Not here. Inside the deepest vault, Captain Alara Ken opened her eyes. The freezing mist evaporated from her breath. Her first memory was sound, not alarms, not voices, but the slow, drawn-out pulse of the station's contact protocol being triggered. Her pulse spiked. She sat up. The AI core's voice cracked through static. Incoming vessel. Unknown code. Non-Terran. Non-authorized. Docking clamps engaged. Emergency sequence Alpha Prime initiated. Commander Ken. Status revived. Her mouth tasted blood. Her last memory had been the fall of Earth's final orbital bastion. The Aegis line, as she ordered the last Ark ships to run, and never return. Time, she croaked. 612 years since stasis initiation. 6 centuries. Her hands trembled as she stood, skin pale and veins blue from cryo-sleep. Around her, other pods remained dark, untouched. Alara was the first. By design. She stared at the alert screen. 3 blinking dots. Unknown biosigns. No human registry. Alien. Fools. She whispered, stepping into her armor. Not ceremonial. Not decorative. War-issue Terran cryo-marines. Armor, laced with memory threads and ceramic plating, forged in the last foundries before the fall. Her boots struck metal as she entered the central command spine. Flicking switches that hadn't been touched in lifetimes. Systems whirred to life. Gravity normalized. Power conduits hissed. Then, movement. The alien vessel docked. Through the reinforced viewport, Alara saw it, a pale thing, smooth and rounded, without edges or scars. A vessel born in peacetime. Their kind had never tasted war, never needed to survive extinction. They were explorers, diplomats, naive, and they had just opened a door that should have stayed buried. A hiss. The outer airlock began to cycle. She sprinted to the weapons bay. Inside was a relic older than the station itself, a plasma forged. Lance hand-marked with her unit's sigil. Phoenix Division, Earth's last guard. She took it in shaking hands. Every joint in her body ached with time and grief. She didn't want this, but they would come, and she would protect what was left, even if it was just ash and memory. The station lights flickered. Somewhere down the corridor, unfamiliar. Footsteps echoed, light, gentle, curious. Alara leveled her lance. The first alien turned the corner. It stood over 7 feet tall, elegant and willowy, skin a soft shimmer of violet and blue. Its eyes pulsed with ambient light. No pupils, just wonder. It didn't see a threat. It saw fascination. Then it saw her. It froze. A long pause. Then, we mean no harm. Are you Terran? Alara stepped forward. Slowly, her voice steady as the grave. I am what's left. The alien's eyes widened. We believed your kind perished in the war of silence. That your signal, our silence, was earned. She cut in, voice like broken stone. We buried it with our dead. You just exhumed it. Behind her, lights pulsed. Blood red, the station awakened. Not just Alara, others. One by one, ancient systems triggered. One by one, the Deathworlders stirred. The alien envoy's voice shook as more of the cryopods hissed open behind Alara. I am Scholar Virel of the Valari Concord, it said, as if a name would stay her hand. We came in peace. We peace, Alara whispered. Her eyes glinted with memories no diplomat could fathom. You don't even know what war means." Behind her, the others began to rise. Old armor creaked. Cold breath met stale air. Boots struck steel floors as Terrans emerged, gaunt, scarred, blinking into a world centuries removed from the one they died to protect. One, a broad-shouldered man with augmentics humming softly beneath his skin, stepped beside her. His name was Idris Harlan, former weapons master of the Lunar Citadel. His right eye still glowed crimson, a relic of orbital radiation. "Did we win?" he asked, cracking his neck. "No," Alara replied. "We just outlasted them." His lips curled. "Sounds about right." Varel backed up, and Teddy twitching in confusion and fear. Behind him, the other Valari emerged. One carried scanning equipment, the other a comrade disc. Neither were warriors. They didn't bring weapons. They didn't bring armor. They weren't prepared. "Your species is not listed," Varel stammered. "The Concord has no record of active Terran systems. Our databanks recorded your extinction in Cycle 9. We didn't go extinct," Alara said. Stepping closer, "We went silent. Why? Because the galaxy burned, and we burned with it." The lights dimmed. Across the station, data cores spun to life. Unsealing records locked for 600 years. Holograms ignited in the air. A field of red markers, fleet losses, planetary exterminations. Last transmissions, Earth, once the blue beacon of Terran civilization, was marked with a black circle. No signal, no survivors. Alara pointed to it. "That was our home. They turned our oceans to glass, and we never stopped fighting." "Who?" Virel asked quietly. "Who did this?" The room fell still. A voice answered from the far end, soft, aged, and full of thunder. "The Zervani," rasped an old man, stepping from cryosuspension. His face was etched with dermal scarring, his body supported by an exo frame. "Commander Rourke, Earth's last fleet strategist." He pointed to a blinking sigil in the hologram. 3 interlocking circles orbiting a singularity. They came from the void between galaxies. No diplomats, no mercy, just conquest. "They don't speak," Alara added. "They consume, they unmake." Virel looked sick, "But they vanished." "No," Rourke said. "We vanished." The Velari delegation stood in stunned silence. What they had seen as a relic of a forgotten age was now unfolding into a living nightmare. And then the long-range sensors pinged. 3 blips. Near. Fast. Alara's brow furrowed. "Show me." The station core displayed it. 3 Zervani scout ships, sleek, obsidian, silent. Their engine trails matched those in Earth's final defense logs, and they were heading directly toward the Velari vessel. "Why now?" Idris muttered. "Because the signal was triggered," Rourke said grimly. "We were hidden until they woke us up." Virel staggered back. "We didn't know. We thought your curiosity was a beacon," Alara snapped. "And they heard it." The station rumbled as warning klaxons flared to life. "Hostile signatures inbound," the AI announced. "Zervani technology confirmed. Weapons primed." The Velari ship's pilot began a frantic retreat to the docking bay, shouting into the air. "Comms, we're not armed for this. We're scientists." "Then you'll die like scientists," Idris said coldly, locking a railgun into his arm slot. "Unless you get behind a bulkhead and pray." The Deathworlders sprang into motion. Alara slammed a fist onto the command table. "All hands, code crimson. Power up rail batteries. Wake units 7 through 13. Bring the automated turrets online and seal the outer ring." "Aye, Commander," voices answered, still hoarse from sleep, but fierce. "We only have a dozen combatants," Idris warned. "That's nothing against 3 Zervani ships." Alara nodded grimly. "Then we make every shot count." Virel stepped forward, desperate. "We didn't mean for this. We wanted to learn, to make peace. Is there no other way?" Alara's eyes locked on his. "Peace was a luxury. You live in a galaxy built on the bones of those who didn't have it. We died so you could forget." The outer hull shuddered, impact tremors. The Zervani had arrived. Alara gritted her teeth and turned to her people. "Deathworlders," she called. "You know what to do." And they did, because they had done it before, on Europa's ice, in Titan sulfur storms, in the burning skies of ruined Earth. They were born of fire, molded by extinction, and no matter how long they slept, their resolve remained eternal. The enemy had found them again, so they would teach the galaxy, again, what it meant to awaken Terran wrath. The Zervani didn't speak. They never did. They announced themselves through silence, through entropy, through impossible stillness that came before the storm. Their ships shimmered just outside the hull of Sentinel-7 like obsidian blades adrift. In space, absorbing light, distorting time, they did not hail. They did not warn. They simply aligned. Inside the station, the ancient war systems roared awake. Alara Ken stalked toward the upper gun deck. Flanked by Idris Harlan and 2 more cryo-revived veterans, they moved with purpose. No fear in their eyes. They had already died once for Earth. This was borrowed time. They're charging. Up, Idris reported, tapping into the surveillance overlay, microsingularity lances. We've got maybe 2 minutes. Not enough to outgun them, said Rourke over comms from the command spine, but maybe enough to outthink them. Old man, Alara replied with a crooked smirk. That's what we do best. Virel and the other Velari watched, stunned, as humans these strange, war-hardened creatures worked with furious, intuitive precision. They didn't wait for consensus. They didn't hesitate. They adapted. Alara stopped at the manual override panel near the torpedo bays. AI, prep internal hardwiring for surge mode fire control. Confirmed. Warning. Surge mode disables all automated targeting safeguards. We know, Idris muttered. That's why we're shooting. As the last panels came online, Idris threw Virel a glance. You came looking for us, for history. You want to know what makes humans different. Virel, still overwhelmed, nodded slowly. Idris smiled without warmth. We break the rules that make lesser species comfortable. Suddenly, the station rocked. The first Servani lance missed the core by meters, carving a molten scar across the outer ring. Lights flickered. Gravity faltered. Oxygen hissed in brief torrents from compromised ducts. Status, Alara barked. Rourke answered, minor. Breach in Section 9. Shields holding. They're testing us. They'll find we still bite. She gripped the manual targeting yoke and stared through the HUD, watching the Zervani ships glide silently around the station like vultures. Their movement was too precise, too coordinated. They weren't probing weakness. They were learning. Time to teach them something. She yanked the targeting control hard to port, locking on the smallest ship, the scout that had first pierced their veil. Idris, on my mark. We burn 1 engine cell. That'll vent half the capacitor. It'll also fake a critical systems failure, she replied. Let them think we're wounded. Idris chuckled. Deathworlder bait. Got it. The order went out. A moment later, one of Sentinel-7's engine cells burst outward in a controlled explosion, sending debris and plasma arcing into space. The Zervani shifted formation. 2 of their ships turned, like predators sensing blood. That's when Alara struck. Firing solution locked, she growled, Mark. The torpedoes screamed from their bays, old, outdated, and damn deadly. The lead Zervani ship dodged the first, but not the second. The warhead tore through its lateral stabilizers, spinning it end over end before detonating its midsection. Black fire erupted in silence. 1 down, the remaining to surge forward, angling for vengeance. But something had changed from deep. Within Sentinel-7's databanks, something old stirred. Not a weapon, not a soldier, a signal. Rourke's voice buzzed through the command net. Alara, I found something. Encrypted command logs. Not from our chain of command. Deeper. Civilian layer. Black archive. What is it? He paused. Hope. A projection lit up beside him. A human voice. Pre-recorded. Grainy. But resolute. This is Dr. Milovas. Project Thanatos protocol. If you're hearing this, then Earth has fallen. Alara froze. The name struck like lightning. Voss. The architect of the Ark evacuation. Thought lost with the final Earth data core. The recording continued. We failed to save the homeworld, but we seeded the stars. 100 genetic vaults, hidden, shielded, a future for humanity, scattered like ash in the void. To find them, activate signal path to Cherinar HO7. It will lead. You. Alara's heart pounded. She built a trail. Rourke's voice cracked. She gave us more than survival. She gave us a way back. Outside, another Zervani lance struck the station. Power surged. The lights died for a breathless second. Then the generator screamed back to life. No one spoke. The revelation hung in the air. There were others out there. Other survivors. Other fragments of a race thought extinct. Humanity wasn't just clinging to memory. It had seeds in the stars. And Alara felt something in her chest she hadn't felt in centuries. Rage and hope. We find those vaults, she whispered. We rally the scattered. We rebuild the flame. And the Zervani, Idris asked. Her eyes flared. We remind them why the stars once feared Earth. Outside, the remaining Zervani ships regrouped, but not without caution now. They had underestimated their prey. They wouldn't do so again. But the Deathworlders had awoken, and they had purpose now. Not just vengeance, but resurrection. A spark had been lit, and the darkness would never smother it again. The Zervani didn't retreat. They recalculated. As their crippled scout vessel disintegrated into radioactive slag, the remaining warships shifted position with chilling grace. They formed a flanking wedge, their obsidian hull shimmering. With defensive plasma veils, there was no panic, no delay, only adaptation, only escalation. Inside Sentinel-7, alarms pulsed a crimson rhythm as the Deathworlders regrouped. Scarred veterans rearmed. Cryo units hissed open one after another. The air reeked of coolant, ozone, and adrenaline. Alara stood in the station's nerve center, gripping the holodable's edges as if it could anchor her to the present. Round her, the map of known space flickered, broken, fragmented, half erased by 6 centuries of silence. The old worlds were gone. The colonies, unknown. The genetic vaults, hidden behind layers of pre-fall encryption. But there was a thread now. Dr. Milovas's legacy. Alara stared at the blinking sigil of Vault of Charon Row 7, the first of 100. It lay deep in the Karthus expanse, buried beneath a dead moon once used for Terran fleet repairs. If we can reach it, said Idris, we might find survivors, or tech, or both. If we can survive the next 10 minutes, Rourke muttered over comms, we might even get the chance. A fresh tremor shook the station. This time, it wasn't from weapons fire. It was from within. The lights flickered, then stabilized. The AI's voice rang out in tones clipped and cold. Power drain detected in fusion chamber Delta. Internal. Sabotage suspected. Alara's head snapped toward the engineering feed. Her gut turned to ice. What? The feed cut to static, then stabilized just long enough to reveal the impossible. A humanoid silhouette, tall, moving with liquid grace. Not Zervani. Not human. Virel gasped. That's not one of ours. It's not one of mine either. Alara growled. The intruder stepped between coils of exposed fusion cables, hand outstretched, phasing through solid matter like it didn't obey the same physics. The chamber dimmed as systems died around it. Zervani infiltrator, Rourke said grimly. Sleeper agent. Bioengineered construct. They must have planted it before first contact. No, look, whispered Idris. The camera caught the thing's face just before static devoured the image. For a split second, it bore features. Human-like. A face built to mimic, to deceive. But the eyes those weren't eyes. They were voids. Artificial black holes. They're making copies of us. Idris muttered, mocking us. Alara's voice dropped to a whisper. Or studying us. Sabotage alarm screamed. We lose. Fusion chamber Delta, Rourke barked. We lose shielding. You know what happens next. We get sliced in half like Europa base. Alara answered. I remember. She turned. Seal engineering. Blow the vents. Incinerate the infiltrator. Varel recoiled. Wait, can't we? It's not a life form. She snapped. It's a weapon-wearing skin. The AI confirmed, purging fusion chamber Delta, executing failsafe. A deep rumble echoed through the station, then a muffled roar, an internal firestorm ripping through vents and circuits. The chamber was gone, and so was the infiltrator. For a moment, the only sound was breathing. Human, heavy, haunted. Alara closed her eyes. We're not dealing with conquerors, she murmured. We're dealing with exterminators. Virel stood frozen. This is what your species fought, survived against, became because of. No, said Idris. This is what we refuse to become. Outside, the Zervani ships began a new maneuver. Their hulls unfolded like origami, releasing smaller drones, sharp, fast, and bristling with nano-disruptors, not meant for war, meant for disassembly. They're targeting the station's memory cores, Rourke said. Not the weapons, not the hull, our knowledge. Alara's stomach twisted. They don't want us dead. They want us erased. She snapped into motion. AI, reroute power to the deep data cores. Idris, get to the lower vaults. Pull what you can from Mila's signal path. Prioritize genetic encryption keys. If we fall, they cannot be lost. What about the Valari? Rourke asked. Alara looked toward Virel. The alien was trembling, his crest lowered, antennae limp. They didn't start this, she said. They woke it up. They deserve a choice. Virel. The scholar straightened. If you want to survive, run. If you want to matter, help us. Virel swallowed hard. What do you need? Your ship's full drive. We patch it into our systems. We make a blind jump to Volta Charon. That's suicide. No, she said, turning to face the holomap. The scattered ruins of humanity blinking in the void. It's resurrection. Another quake. Systems groaned. The Zervani were closing in. But the humans, broken, buried, forgotten, had never once fought to win. They fought so others could rise after. And now, for the first time in centuries, they would rise again. Deep in Sentinel-7's vaults, ancient systems hummed like a sleeping beast stirring to life. Idris Harlan descended into the lower decks with 3 Deathworlders in tow, each carrying portable drives, plasma cutters, and one shared thought burning in their minds: get the keys. Get them out. Above them, the station groaned under pressure. The Zervani weren't just battering shields now. They were dissecting the structure in layers, searching for the marrow of humanity's forgotten strength. Their drones are precision broing. Idris muttered, sweat clinging to his brow. They're not here to fight. They're here to erase memory, and deep down, he understood why. They remembered what humans had once been, and they feared what humanity could be again. He reached the sealed vault, a black steel door with Terran defense sigils long since outlawed by the Galactic peace accords. With a flick of his wrist, Idris ignited the plasma cutter and began carving through time. Above, in the station's heart, Alara Ken stood shoulder to shoulder with Virel and Commander Rourke. The Valari scholar worked quickly, his appendages tapping data nodes with frantic speed, bypassing alien safety protocols to inject their ship's full drive schematics directly into Sentinel-7's cracked systems. I don't know if this will even hold, Virel muttered. Valari fold drives are designed for science vessels, not human war citadels. It doesn't need to hold, Alara said, teeth bared. It needs to fire. Once, she keyed in the coordinates for Volta Charon 7, the blinking blue marker on their ghost map. Everything we are, everything we've lost, is riding on this. Rourke looked at her, war-worn eyes quiet. And if it kills us? Alara didn't hesitate. Then the stars will carry our ashes with purpose. A sudden jolt. Static snapped. Across the holoscreens, Zervani drone breach detected. Inner hull compromised. Repeat. Inner hull compromised. Where? Rourke demanded. Section Delta 3. The AI responded. Idris's channel crackled. That's where I am. The vault door fell with a heavy clang as Idris and his team stumbled inside. Shelves of cryo-sealed drives, crystalline memory cores, and preserved genetic strands lined the room, a graveyard of futures wrapped in steel and glass. He wasted no time. Got him, he shouted. 3 full keys from the Voss protocol, a Charon, Delphis, and EIC lines. I'm pulling data now. Wait. A low hiss filled the air. Then a shape emerged from the shadows. Not Zervani, not machine, something in between. It looked like a child, human-shaped, maybe 10 years old, but its skin shimmered like folded light. Its eyes were pinpricks of collapsing gravity. It moved wrong, to smooth, to fast, to aware. Idris raised his sidearm. Back, now. The thing spoke, and its voice was a perfect imitation of Milavos. You left us. You buried us in silence. It stepped forward. You burned the stars. Idris didn't hesitate. He fired 3 shots into its skull. It collapsed in flickers of starlight and meat. One of his team whispered, "What the hell was that?" Zervani mimic weapon. Idris spat. Learning. Testing. Trying to speak our language now. He clutched the drives tighter. Get me out. Now. Alara's voice screamed through calms. Idris, fold spike in 30 seconds. If you're not on deck, you're left behind. We're moving above. The Zervani ships aligned again, this time with focus. Their hulls shimmered with shifting sigils, unreadable to any Terran mind. But Alara understood the intent. Annihilation. Rourke's fingers flew across the old navigation console. Full drive hybrid is patched. Minimal nav calibration. Jump will be blind. Then aim for the only light left in the dark. Virel stood in silence, his crest trembling. If we do this, if we survive this, the Concord will never believe it. Good, Alara said. Then maybe they'll stay away long enough for us to fix what you broke. Idris burst onto the deck with a limp and disgorged crewmates behind him. He threw the drives down on the table. 3 vaults, all viable, genetic code intact. Alara nodded. That's enough. She slammed her hand on the emergency actuator. All hands, brace for fold jump. This is not a drill. As the station's core bled power into the patched-together fold. Hooray! The hull of Sentinel-7 screamed under pressure. One last Zervani beam carved down through the deck above them. An air sucked through a blossoming breach. Time folded. Reality tore. The stars warped into serpents of light as the universe screamed, in protest. And then, nothing. For a breathless moment, there was only blackness. Then, stars. New stars. Calmer. Dimmer. Alara gasped as the deck steadied beneath her feet. Report, she barked. Fold complete, the AI whispered. Voltacharin 07 confirmed within 1 light minute. Orcs slumped in his chair, smiling through bloody lips. We're alive. Idris leaned against the console, panting. And now, Alara stared out the viewport at the dead moon drifting ahead, the coordinates from Voss's transmission glowing in red. Now, she said, we wake the rest of the dead. The moon was ash-gray, pockmarked with the craters of long-forgotten wars. No atmosphere, no signal, just a lifeless sphere orbiting a dwarf star that barely qualified as light. But buried beneath its crust, something pulsed. Alara Ken stood. At the edge of the hangar bay, armored boots magnetized to the hull of a newly deployed scout skiff, watching the surface of Voltacharin 07 grow larger by the second. Her jaw clenched as they descended. This was not hope. Not yet. Hope was for after. Right now was duty. We're coming in over the impact trench. Idris's voice crackled over comms from the pilot's seat. Scans show an energy signature 1 click below the surface. Matches Terran biocrypt architecture. You're sure? I was in orbit when the first one was built. He muttered. I'm sure. The skiff kissed down with practiced precision. Dust plume and settle. They moved quickly, a team of 6, Alara, Idris, Rourke, Virel, and 2 others revived from cryo. The Valari scholar had insisted on coming. No one stopped him. He was part of this now. Beneath their boots, the surface hummed faintly, just enough to make hair stand on end. This vault's still alive, Alara whispered. After 6 centuries, they located the breach point, a jagged tier sealed by ancient ferroglass. Idris pressed a fusion cutter to the edge, going in. The vault responded before the blade bit. It opened, a slow, grinding groan as the ground itself retracted. Layers of dust parted to reveal a descending tunnel lit by soft blue bioluminescence. Symbols lined the walls, old Terran glyphs etched with reverence. Rourke exhaled. They sealed it with a heartbeat sensor, recognized us as kin. They descended. The air turned heavy with memory. Beneath the surface, the vault revealed. Itself, rows of stasis pods, dozens deep, each containing a person or a seed. Children, clones, genetic echoes of what Earth lost. Not yet born, but waiting. Waiting for this, Alara approached the control terminal. Dust clung to its surface, but the screen flickered at her touch. A hologram sparked, Malavos. Or rather, a projection of her, Voltacharin, secondary genesis. Seed line. Population 263, viable, standby state. Automated birth sequence ready upon Terran confirmation. Alara's voice cracked. Confirm. Alara Ken. Rank. Captain, Terran Defense. Identity key code, 9R Astra Theta. A pause. Confirmed, the AI replied. Welcome home, behind her. Virel stumbled forward, whispering in awe. You didn't just survive. You planned for resurrection. Idris moved among the pods, fingers brushing along their frost-covered surfaces. We had to. We weren't the first humans. We knew we wouldn't be the last. Then came the sound none of them wanted to hear. The Zervani ping. Low. Deep. Not from the station, from space. Rourke's voice sharpened over the comm. We've been followed. Back on Sentinel-7, now adrift in lunar orbit, the AI issued a confirmation. Zervani vessel inbound. 1 Dread class estimated contact in 7 minutes. Can we jump again? Alara asked. Full drive critically unstable. Another jump risks core breach. Of course it does. Idris muttered. Alara turned to the vault controls. What about burst sequence? Can we move them? Negative, the AI answered. Genesis units required 20 minutes for safe decapsulation. She cursed. Virel stepped forward. You don't have 20. No, Alara said. But we have 7. She touched her comms. Sentinel, patch to orbital weapon grid, override safeties. I need every gun on that dreadnought the moment it breaks orbit. Confirmed. Station defense systems arming. Idris, Rourke, set charges on the tunnel entrance. We collapse it if we have to. Are we giving up the vault? Idris asked, shocked. We're protecting it, Alara snapped. They want our extinction. They won't get our future. The vault lights dimmed briefly, pressure shifted. A hum filled the chamber. The sound of birth sequences beginning. Tiny hearts, electric pulses, synthetic walms stirring. Life, then war. The Zervani dreadnought broke lunar shadow. A shape unlike any ship the Valari had ever imagined, coiled, jagged, hungry. It moved without propulsion, as if space bent for it. Its presence eclipsed stars. The first beam came a second later, slicing past Sentinel-7 and carving a chasm into the moon's far side. Sentinel-7 answered. Rail batteries screamed. Ancient particle lances surged. Guided torpedoes, stitched together by half-broken code, flew true. But the Zervani adapted, always adapting. They ignored the weapons, targeted the vault. Covering fire, Alara ordered, racing up the tunnel. Idris, collapse entrance on my mark. I thought we were saving it. We are. We just have to save it by dying first. Outside, fire and ice danced in vacuum. Inside, hope slept in pods of glass. And memory, and between them stood a species once called monsters, now acting as guardians of their unborn. Alara reached the surface just as a Zervani drill pod slammed into the far ridge. One more second, and they'd be inside. She screamed over comms now. The charges lit the sky with fire. Stone and steel collapsed behind them, sealing the vault, hiding the future in dust. The drill pod shattered in the blast. Then, silence. Alara stood panting, half-blind from the flash, armor cracked, skin bleeding under her collar. Idris crawled up beside her, coughing. Think it worked. She stared at the crater. They'll dig, but they'll never understand what they're digging for. Behind them, Sentinel-7 burned in the sky, but it held. One last stand was coming, and the Deathworlders would be ready. There are moments in history where silence screams louder than war. This was one of them. The Zervani dreadnought hovered above the shattered moon like a dark god, blind to diplomacy, deaf to reason. Below, Sentinel-7 scarred, sparking, and barely breathing floated between death and defiance. In the war room, ash drifted from a shattered panel. Sparks danced like fireflies. Alara Kent stood in the center, her armor scorched, her blood drying black against her collar. One eye swollen shut, breathing ragged, but her spine was straight. We're not running, she said into the command net. Not again, Idris. Harlan limped to her side. His mechanical eye sparked erratically. His weapon systems were failing. Half his armor hung from one shoulder, held in place by sheer defiance. They've sent everything. He said. No, Rourke corrected through blood-streaked lips. They've sent enough to finish a grave. But they forgot something. Alara nodded slowly. The dead don't stay buried. On the screen, the Zervani began their final descent. Their dreadnought reoriented and its underbelly opened, revealing a cascading spiral of light. Gravity wells spinning within gravity wells. It was the Unmaker beam, the weapon that ended Mars, that split the rings of Saturn like glass, that reduced Earth's last space citadel into heat and memory. They were going to erase the vault. Alara looked to Virel. The Valari scholar stood, wide-eyed, trembling. I need you to make this count, she said softly. Transmit everything you've seen to the Concord, all of it. Let them know who we were, who we are. He stammered. You're not going to survive this, are you? No, she said, but they will. Her hand swept toward the screen behind her, the sealed vault beneath the moon, the cradle of humanity's rebirth, protected by fire, hidden by sacrifice. The AI broken, enemy super weapon charging, estimated firing in 90 seconds. Deploy the last torpedoes, Alara ordered. Targets, all of them. Idris's eye flickered. That'll leave us dry. Then we finish it with our hands from Sentinel-7's fractured spine. The final warheads launched. Dozens of them, each one old, scarred. Some carried Terran warheads. Others bore hacked Valari plasma cells, a Frankenstein's miracle of last-gen fury. They screamed toward the dreadnought, not to destroy it, but to make it look, and it did. The Zervani, for all their cold brilliance, turned their shields. To catch the swarm, it was all Alara needed. She turned to Idris. You remember the Lazarus protocol? His breath hitched. Alara, that system was never meant to. It was built to kill the unkillable. This is the time. Lazarus was Earth's final sin, an AI weapon nested deep in Sentinel's core. And before it ever launched, it didn't fire warheads or beams. It weaponized human memory. It turned grief, rage, fear, pain into quantum pattern. Feedback, emotional resonance warfare, the kind of thing that fried enemy minds, melted logic trees. It was suicide to use. It required a human soul to guide the signal. She was already stepping into the chair. "Patch me into it," she said. "I'll anchor the pulse." "No," Virel cried. "You'll burn alive." Alara looked at him, and for a moment, she wasn't a soldier. She was the last daughter of a murdered world, a voice of ash and hope. "Good," she said. "Let them feel it." The chair locked around her, sensors embedded in her spine. Her thoughts bled into the core. Memory surged. Her sister dying in orbit over Venus. The last transmission from her father. Voice trembling, the sky on fire above Earth. The pain became data. The data became light. The light became a weapon, firing Lazarus pulse, the AI intoned. A beam of emotion burst from Sentinel-7, not just light, not just energy, but truth. It carried 600 years of silence, of buried screams, of every name lost and every flame extinguished. It slammed into the Zervani dreadnought, and it staggered. For the first time in recorded history, a Zervani warship halted its function. Its spin failed. Its weapons dimmed. Its shields dropped, and in that moment, humanity was seen, not as primitives, not as relics, but as monsters born of grief who refused to vanish. Alara screamed as the feedback surged through her. Her skin blistered. Her heartbeat surged. Her mind touched something vast and broke it. The Zervani dreadnought cracked. It didn't explode. It simply folded in on itself, collapsing into a null space rift. Dragged screaming into a hole no science could measure, the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was reverent. Idris collapsed to his knees. Rourke wept, hand over heart. Virel simply stared at Alara still, slumped in the Lazarus chair, smoke curling from her armor. He choked. "Is she?" Rourke approached. Slowly, he touched her neck. A pulse, faint. "She bought us a future," he whispered. Sentinel-7 groaned, its frame dying. But in its core, life had been defended. The vault remained untouched. And through the silence, the stars finally whispered back. They survived. The vault opened with the light of a new dawn. One by one, the pods began to stir, air pressure equalizing, stasis fluid draining. Pale skin warmed by the soft pulse of artificial sunrise. Infants, cloned adolescents, and seeded embryos stirred. In the silence of rebirth, a voice guided the process, calm, maternal, unwavering, Malavos. "Long dead, living on in code. Welcome, children of Earth," she said. "You are the last and the first." Beneath the moon's crust, where war had never touched, the human race began again above. Sentinel-7 drifted in orbit like a smoking crown. Its outer ring had collapsed. Debris danced in slow circles. Fires flickered within its dying walls. The great station would not survive another rotation, but it had done its job. On the fractured command deck, Idris Harlan watched the vault's data stream scroll across a cracked monitor. Birth sequences successful. DNA viability confirmed. The seeds had taken root. He stood beside a still figure wrapped in a thermal shroud. Her armor blackened, her chest rising slow and shallow. Alara Kent lived, barely. She held the line. Idris whispered. So they could be more than memory. Across from him, Virel recorded everything. Data, telemetry, voice logs, Alara's final transmission. The moment the Zervani dreadnought died screaming in silence. "What will you do with all this?" Idris asked, voice tired. Virel didn't look up. "Deliver it to the Concord, to the archives, to every species that ever asked why Earth fell." He paused. No one understood what Deathworlder meant. Not truly, until now. The Zervani signal had gone dark. Their ships across this quadrant vanished. Some believed the Lazarus pulse fractured their collective link, splintered their neural lattice beyond repair. Others thought they had seen something within the feedback they could not bear. Either way, they left. The war was not won, but it had paused, and sometimes a pause was enough to change everything. Weeks later, the Velari diplomatic vessel Siren's Promise floated in orbit, its pristine hull a jarring contrast to the wounded. Sentinel, inside, in a clean chamber lit by violet suns, Alara Kent awoke. Her voice was cracked, dry. "Did we lose?" Idris, sitting at her bedside, laughed quietly. No, we made them blink. She turned her head slowly, vault intact, growing. Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. I didn't think I'd ever see it. You almost didn't, he said. You burned so hot in that chair we thought you'd melt the deck. I paused, and you smiled. She blinked. I smiled, right before it hit, like you knew you'd win. She closed her eyes. I wasn't smiling for them. I was smiling. For us. For everyone they tried to erase. Virel entered then, cloaked in white, the recording note floating behind him. I wanted to say goodbye, he said. Alara looked up. You're leaving. I have to. The Concord must hear this. She studied him carefully. What will you tell them? Virel exhaled, hands clasped, that we contacted Deathworlders by mistake and found ourselves face to face with the soul of defiance. He stepped forward, laying a thin data plate in her hand. A message from your vault. Alara tapped the device weakly. A projection shimmered to life. A young girl, perhaps 10, standing in starlight, hair like Alara's, eyes sharp, full of fire. I am child of Cherno one, she said. I was born in the dust of the old world. I carry the memories of those who died from my breath. One day, I will walk the stars, not as a relic but as a reminder. The girl smiled. Earth burned, but its ashes grew roots. Later, Idris stood at the edge of the hangar, watching the void, arms crossed. Where will you go? Alara asked behind him. He didn't turn. Wherever they fear us next. She stepped beside him, leaning on the rail. They'll come again. He nodded, and they'll find we're harder to kill than before. They looked out over the stars, the remains of the war, the vault below, the silence that followed. Not peace, legacy. A final message was recorded. That cycle, spoken by Alara Ken herself. It traveled via Velari signal threads, across 100 systems, bouncing off derelict relays and forgotten outposts. It was heard in places that had once cursed Earth's name, and in places where children still dreamed of blue skies. The message was short. This is not a declaration of war. This is a memory. You tried to erase us, but we are written in fire, and now the stars carry our name.